I will remind you also that I uploaded yesterday's presentations to YouTube, so you can go and watch those today, and I will share that link. But let's go ahead and get started for today. So this disclaimer is saying that an online degree from Ashford University does not lead to immediate teacher licensure in any state. And if you want to become a classroom teacher and you're here at Ashford University, you will need to go back to your state's education department to be licensed. Next slide, please. This disclaimer says that Ashford is not responsible for any videos, links, pictures, or anything else that we have on our slides. So Cindy, without further ado, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I'm excited to be here, and I'm going to start out by sort of apologizing if you hear sirens in the background. I am on the East Coast, and we are in the middle of tornado watches here. So you might hear some things. Rest assured, I have a hotspot next to me. If my electric goes out, I can get right back on. But let's get started. So hopefully we'll make it through before any weather interferes. We're going to start out this morning talking about rules. There are a couple times where I'm going to ask participants to go into the chat box and type some things in, so you might want to open that. You should see a menu item for that at the bottom of your screen. You can kind of play around with your screen and find the chat and have that ready. And I want to let you know that what we're going to talk about rules today applies to people of all ages, not just the children necessarily in your classroom. The way that we're going to talk about rules should be taught to children from the time they're born. This is how we should talk to them. And I still talk to my young adult children this way. I have 2 children in their 20s, and this is still my approach to them. Before we can talk about what to say about rules in particular with young children, we have to talk about the word discipline. We all have to be on the same page about this word. And this word has been somewhat corrupted in its use in our world. Here's how I know. I was in a supermarket, and there were 2 young children who were asked to wait by the supermarket checkout while someone was talking to the cashier, and 2 young children are going to do what they do. They were grabbing for each other, they were reaching for the candy and the gum that was next to them, they were arguing with each other, and 2 adults nearby turned to each other. One of them said to the other, "Those kids need discipline." And by that, they meant punishment. But the word discipline doesn't mean punishment. So let's get all on the same page about what we're talking about here when we talk about teaching children discipline. What I'm going to ask you to do is go into the chat box, and I'm going to ask you, make sure in your chat box that it's set to type to everyone in the meeting so that you don't send a private message that we can't see. And then type in there a discipline. Somebody name a discipline. And I'll get you started if you're kind of wondering what I'm looking for. A discipline is the martial arts. Exercise, someone just typed in exercise, teaching, yoga, CrossFit, for sure. Writing. What's another discipline? Sports. All sports are a discipline. And as you keep typing these disciplines in, I'm going to tell you a little sports story. I have 2 sons. Both of them played t-ball when they were little. And here's what you learn as the parent of a t-ball player. It is instinct that when they hit the ball off the tee, they run to third base, directly to third base. And you get a bunch of adults standing on the side screaming, "Go to first, go to first," and coaches are running over and guiding them to first because they have to learn to go to first base. Why do they have to learn to go to first base? Why can't we just let them run to third? Because we would like eventually for them to succeed at this game. They have to learn the rules of the game to succeed at this game. And that's how we're going to look at rules. To succeed in the society in which these children live, they have to learn the rules of the game. They're not born knowing that. And we have to kind of get over the notion that was just generations long, that children are born knowing these things. They're not. We're here along with their families to teach them. So when you look at disciplines and you look at what you typed in, and you look at things like mindfulness, gardening, reading the Bible, playing an instrument, brushing your teeth, sports, writing, all these things have procedures and rules that you need to follow. And what you've learned are the procedures and rules that you needed to follow to succeed at those things. When you look up discipline in the dictionary, this is what you get. And what I did was I highlighted in red a couple of important phrases to again focus us on what we're doing. Discipline has to do with the field of study, a rule or system of rules governing the way you behave. One might assume, it says in the second part of the quote, that the word's first meaning in English had to do with education. So what we're going
Hey everybody, she is having some tornado warnings in her city, so we are going to give her a second. She may have just lost connection. We will be thinking of her. We know that can be scary. There she is. Did your lights just go out?
Am I back? Am I back?
You are back.
Oh my goodness, hang on. Let me just make sure of my internet connection.
Are you safe?
I am. The lights
okay,
just went
I'm just
out.
making sure.
So I'm hoping that my computer just switched over. Let me see. Yep, it just switched over to my hotspot. So I'm in the dark, but I can still do this.
Okay, just please stay safe, okay?
Yeah, thanks. No, I'm good. It's not a tornado. It's just the wind. So as long as I'm back on and you can see me, we're going to continue. So as I was saying, the meaning has to do with education. So we're going to focus on the fact that this means we teach. We teach the rules by which people can succeed. We teach the boundaries that will help them succeed in their society. So now focusing on teaching, here's what we need to think about. What are your current rules? So to frame what rules are, because they're not just what hang up on the wall of a classroom, let's watch this really brief video. What are your rules? Wash your hands, get in line, keep your fingers out of your nose. Rules are not only what you post on your wall. They are everything you want and expect the children to do that they otherwise wouldn't do. Go to the Zoom chat box and type your rules. What do you ask the children to do? Okay, what do you ask the children to do that they otherwise wouldn't do? And start typing in the chat box. What are some of the things you say to children that if you didn't say it to them, they wouldn't do it? So here we go. We're gonna watch them fly by now. Walk quietly, line up, take turns. Keep your hands to yourself. Be kind or be helpful. Pick up after yourself. Don't rock in the chair. Put away materials. Wash hands for 20 seconds. Gentle hands. Someone once asked me when I was doing this session live, someone said, is keep your finger out of your nose a rule? I said, it certainly is. Because you know what? They would have their finger in their nose if you didn't tell them that. Keep your hands out of your pants is a rule. Keep your hands to yourself. Keep clean up. Clean up is going to be a big thing now. Clean up. All of these things that we say to them all day long. So I want you to picture this. I do this session live. I give people Post-its. I say on individual Post-its, write down all your rules. They pile Post-its in front of themselves. Piles of Post-its, folks, of what they say to children that they need them to do. And you can keep typing in the chat. We can keep watching it go by. When I do this session, a similar session with families, just so you know, and I say to the parents, I want you to write down everything you ask the children to do, they get a whole nother pile of Post-its in front of them. So, you know, what does that tell us? You've got your pile of Post-its of what you tell them. We're watching this chat go by. Parents have their pile of Post-its. I often think that to young children, this must sound like that teacher in the Peanuts cartoons that's like wah, 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 wah. That's what it must sound like to them. We need to focus them. So here's what you need to know. There are only 3 rules. That's it. Everything else are details. There are 3 rules to life, and here they are. In adult language, I would tell you that the 3 rules to teach children and adults, by the way, are guard your health and safety, have respect for people, and have respect for property. Those are the rules. Now, I can't talk to young children about it that way because the word respect is very abstract. They don't know what you really mean by that. Even their health and safety, that's a very abstract thing. And by the way, young children, you know, their health and safety is the last thing they think about because they don't really believe that they can get hurt. And honestly, neither do we. We behave in ways that show us that we don't believe that we can get hurt. So we need to put this in ways that children understand. So for these 3 rules, health and safety, respect for people, respect for property, here's how I talk to young children about it. And again, this is how I still talk to my own children about it. Here are the phrases I use. Health and safety becomes be safe. That's it. Simple. Be safe. This is why I'm asking you to do this. Be safe. Respect for people simply becomes be kind. It does not become we're all friends in here because that's not the truth. They're not all going to be friends. That's an unrealistic expectation of young children. It's an unrealistic expectation of any human. If I put you in a room with 15 other people, think about how many friends you walk out with. We do need them, whether they are friends or not, to be kind. And that's a life lesson. So respect for people becomes be kind. And respect for property becomes take care of our things, which is a way better way to tell children to clean up by reminding them that we need to take care of our things. So these are the phrases that I use with these very young children. I pick one for the situation. You have to pick the one that most applies to each situation. And then the details can change from room to room, setting to setting, place to place, age to age. When children are infants and they knock something down, we can say, be safe. Leave it on the table so that they start to hear this language from the beginning. My 20-something-year-old children, when they have an argument with a friend, I will tell them to be kind and pick up the phone and call because you care. These 3 phrases are always the first thing that I say. This is my first sentence. So if I'm going to talk to children about rules, this is what I do. I state one of those 3 main rules, and then I tell the children what I need them to do, which is very different than what I don't want them to do. When we give children negative commands, they don't know what to do with that. You tell them, don't run in the hallway, and I've done this with young children. When you tell them, don't run, they pause, and then they take off running again. They do that because they have an urge, an impulse to run, and that part of the brain that controls impulse is underdeveloped at this age. So they're going to follow their impulses if they have nothing else to do with them. So what I need to do is tell them what I need them to do. If they're pushing and shoving each other, I might say, be kind. Your hands go on your own body. Be kind. Wait for your turn. Be safe. Walk in the hallway. And another thing, just as a little side note, that I don't do is I don't use those common early childhood setting phrases like walking feet. And I'm going to explain why I don't use it, just to give you some food for thought. I feel like it's our job to teach children vocabulary, and vocabulary that they're going to need to use in the world. And when I'm running through a crowd, because I'm going to miss my bus or my train or whatever's happening, no one turns to me and says, hey, lady, walking feet. I need them to know what they're going to hear in future years. I need to teach them proper phrasing. So I'll tell them to please walk in the hallway. Please walk is good for young children. Be safe. Keep your feet on the ground if a child is climbing. And then way better than telling children to clean up are take care of our things. Please put everything on the shelf. Please put that item on the shelf. The reason we phrase it with the main rule first is because we're telling the children 2 things. We're telling them this is what kindness means in this setting, at this age right now. This is what kindness means, or what safety means, or what taking care of our things mean. And then we're telling them, this is why I'm asking you to do it. I'm not just randomly asking you to wait for your turn. I'm asking you to do that because it's kind. When we talk to children this way, they respond very differently than the way that children were spoken to for many generations. It was just passed down, folks. That's what it was done. It was passed down, and it was passed down to us. I know that I wasn't spoken to this way as a child. Many of us weren't. But I'll tell you that when I help schools to implement this, especially on a school-wide basis, but even in individual classrooms, when I help schools to implement this, they tell me that they cannot believe the difference in the responsiveness of the children. Children will still cross boundaries. We need to know that. They're still going to cross boundaries. So the question then is, what do we do when the children cross boundaries? What should we do? Here's what we need to do. We need to bring the child to us, not send them from us. Sending them from us isolates them in their emotions. There were many studies done having to do with a practice that was really popular when I was raising my kids, and that practice was timeout. Lots of studies done about timeout. And when they said to people, when you were sent to timeout as a kid, how did that feel? They said things like, I just got angrier and angrier. Oh, I was so mad. I hated them for doing that. What did you learn? Nothing. So we're not going to do that. We're going to bring them to us because children need to know who their safe people are, even when the chips are down. Even when something upsetting has happened, I'm still your safe person. So I want to bring them to me, and I'm going to sit them down and say the facts simply and kindly, something they don't necessarily know, which is when you kick, that hurts her skin. That's something that children sometimes need to be told and taught. And then we're going to talk about 2 acceptable options for the next time. Something like, when you kick her, that hurts her skin. Next time you're mad, you can tell her to stop, or you can come get me and I'll help you. For young children, my second option is always come get me, I'll help you, because that's what I'm supposed to do. That's my job. And they can't think through the steps yet of solving these sorts of problems. I have to model it for them and I have to help them. And then I teach them some empathy and compassion. You know, here's how I feel about the phrase, I'm sorry. It is a phrase that we use in our language. And when we tell children things like, just go say you're sorry, and we don't add anything to that, then they think the words I'm sorry make it all okay. It's all okay then. They figure they can pretty much do anything as long as they say I'm sorry. So I don't want to do that. I might say to them, we're going to tell her that we're sorry by making her feel better. What do you think would make her feel better? And then, of course, we need related consequences. Sending a child away from you or punishing children rarely relates to what's happening. So I might tell a child who's hit somebody with a block, for example, I might say, you can't go back to the blocks right now. Pick something else. And then I give them a choice of what they can do. You can go play Play-Doh or you can color at the table. Which one would you like to do? When we give children a choice to end the episode, we re-empower them. Children feel very, very off kilter when they're being talked to about their behavior. We have to give them what's called emotional equilibrium. We have to teach them that it's okay, you're not entirely powerless, but you can, here's what you can control in this situation right now, and give them a choice. Another thing that we have to be sure to do when we're talking to young children is set them up for success. We have to set them up for success throughout the day with how we handle transitions and routines. We have to always keep in mind that they're not tiny little adults. Transitions and routines are hard for them. And at this time, what I'd like you to think about is the transition that occurred mid-March for all of us, this transition to less freedom of movement, this transition to working totally virtually for me, not just somewhat virtually, this transition to being unable to see people at will and go where we wanted. In many, many parts of the country that happened. In some parts of the country that's happening right now, where regulations are being put in place for people's health and safety, and it disrupts us. It disrupts our routines. It's not what we want to do. And that was, here to tell you, a tough transition for me. I want you to sit for a second and think about how that felt. How did that transition feel? You can put some things in the chat and let me know, how did that transition feel to you? Okay, heart-wrenching for sure. While you're deciding what you want to put in, punch in the gut, yes. Heart-wrenching. I have a son who lives in Brooklyn. I haven't seen him since February. Heart-wrenching. Fearful, frustrating, punch in the gut, heart-wrenching. These are great ways to describe what we've been through. So I'm going to submit to you that young children feel like this a lot. Because when we need them to transition, they often don't see it coming. They don't understand. They want to do what they want to do. They're used to now having a little bit of freedom in what they're doing, and we're taking it away. I'm going to submit to you that for young children, this is one of the reasons why transitions are hard. And I'll share this personal tidbit with you too. There was a moment at which I was really panicked about what was happening. And I thought, what am I going to do? What am I going to do with my consulting clients? What am I going to do with the conference speaking? What am I going to do? I'm doomed. And I realized that I just didn't know what was coming. And I was wrong about being doomed, so very wrong. I couldn't see what was coming. So it kind of put me in a panic. And there was one moment where I looked at my husband and I said, you know, I have an increased empathy for young children because this must be what it feels like all the time. So let's not do it to them. Let's set them up for success. And here are some ways. We've thought about the past 5 months or so, and this was the word I came up with. For me, it was a whole bunch of stress. Children are under stress a lot because of adult expectations and because of the ways that people set things up without knowing any better. So this was my word. And here's what we're going to do about it. For many children, the transitions are sudden and disruptive, like we felt, scary and unpredictable. So we're going to help them to understand the flow of their day. We're going to help them to understand what's going to happen when this thing ends. But we have to do it in really, really real ways for them. Again, they're not abstract thinkers. So these are schedule cards. I know some of you on the call have probably seen these before or used these before, but if you have not, I just implore you to start using schedule cards. Here's what you need. You're going to need pictures. These are pictures. The reason the faces are blurred out is these are pictures of actual students in that year's class. And I asked permission from a couple of my clients to use these pictures, and they said, sure, as long as you block out the kids' faces. Because I wanted you to see that these are really taken from the classroom. In the first couple of weeks of school, the teachers take these pictures of the children doing all the different things that they're going to do throughout the year. And you need something that can be where the pictures can be removed, because every morning, a really good use of your large group time is to, with the children, set up the real agenda for their day. Nothing should happen in that day for which you don't have a card. So if you have a yoga teacher that comes once a week, that teacher gets a card. If you have special visitors sometimes, like in October, many people have the firefighters come. You should have a firefighter card. You need to think about what possibly could happen during the day. I was in a class recently, they have a mystery reader once a week. A family member comes in. And so they have a card where it's a picture of a book with a question mark, and the kids know that means that's when the mystery reader is coming. So they set up the cards with the kids in the morning. You can see it's pictures of the children doing it with the words. And then either throughout the day, you make one of the responsibilities in your classroom, one of the jobs, to remove the cards as the day goes on. Children who are struggling with separation anxiety can then be brought over to count how many more things they have to do, and they can see those things and it's not abstract. In some classes, the bottom picture has a star that the schedule keeper moves over as the day goes on. And I'll tell you what, when you put this at the height of the children and they can use this as a tool, they will go over and they will use it often. Not only will they use it themselves, but I have seen young children help their classmates get through the day. I have seen 3-year-olds, when a child is crying, I want my mommy because the child's having a rough day, or I want my daddy, or I want grandma. I've seen their classmates go over to them and say, look, we still have playground and choice, and then you get to see her. They learn to do that for each other, which is a beautiful thing. Here's another example, and I'm sharing this picture because I just loved this one, and I took it after the last ones. This is a terrific example. What they did was they took pictures of the kids, they just printed them on regular printer paper, they set it up so the words were under, they cut it and they laminated it. You can see the Velcro where they have 3 extra spots on the bottom tier. There are some experts who recommend that you hang them from top to bottom, and I'm going to contradict that. This expert is going to recommend that you hang them from left to right, because we want to teach children to read in this country, in our language, in English, from left to right. So I always want them to be looking from left to right. They'll naturally start to do it that way. So that's when this teacher didn't have enough room to put them all in a row, she went to the next line. And you can see where she has extra spots to put if something else is happening that day. You also need to provide children with individual and specific warnings for when things are going to change. So let's say children are playing in your classroom. It's free playtime. And free playtime is about to end. They should get warnings. Again, think about how it felt when you suddenly heard things are closed and you felt like there was no warning. It was very jarring and scary. So what we're going to do is we're going to warn them very specifically based on what we're doing. For example, we're going to go over to the children who are doing puzzles and say, please finish that puzzle. Don't take another one. We're going to go to lunch. You can go over to the children who are playing with Legos and say, you can finish building your Lego tower. When you're done, please put the Legos back in this box. We're going to go to the playground. You can go to the children who are on the playground and say, you can go up and down the slide one more time, and then we're heading in. Those are real ways to warn them. I think about when my kids were little and they wanted to know, when are we seeing Aunt Jody? And I would say, in 2 more sleeps, we're going to see Aunt Jody. When my kids would say, when can we go out to the playground? I would say, 1 more SpongeBob and I'll be ready to go. So I'm not sure why we do this with our kids at home, and we've never properly translated it, I think, into early childhood classrooms. So please start to do this where you go over and give them individual warnings based on what they're doing. Children come in the morning and you need them to come over to your large group time, your circle time, but they're sort of over there talking to each other, haven't hung up their stuff in their cubby. Go over to them and say, please hang your coat up so you can come to the carpet. Instead of just, let's go, we have to go to the carpet, let's go. Let them understand the flow of the day that way. Your routines should be very predictable, though the content within your routines can change. So your schedule should pretty much flow the same way every day. You're going to do large group time, probably first thing in the morning every day, large group or circle time. But that doesn't mean that what you do within circle time has to be the same every day. We've done that for many years, folks. We have done that whole thing of it all has to stay the same. So every day I'm going to do what I learned to do years ago. A session about circle time is like a whole other learning session at a conference. But just know your circle time can be a little different every day. You can greet them with the same song and then ask them different questions every day, have different conversations every day. It's kind of like you'll repeat books when you do read alouds, but you're not going to read the same book every single day for a whole year. So know that you can switch the content up. And please, when you're doing your schedule, for the children's sake, it sets them up to succeed. Alternate passive and active activities. It helps with their behavior. So you should have an arrival activity, something that attaches them to the room, that shifts them from home to school when you're live in school. So you might have them come, sign in some way, even if they're just scribbling because they're too young to be writing their names. They come in, they move their picture, they scribble in some way, they have a sign-in routine. Then you're going to gather them for large group time, so they're sitting. Then free choice, so they're moving. Then a small group time, so they're sitting. And then playground, so they're moving. I know that what I have on the screen is ideal, and you can't always do this because of assigned playground times and meal times, but please do your best to move them in between. When we ask children to sit for too long in a row, that's when we see some behaviors emerging because they can't cope with it. So we're going to constantly keep them sitting, moving, sitting, moving, sitting, moving, and they learn to self-regulate better that way. When you are predictable, and this is very important during this time of COVID-19, just know that when you are very predictable, you are also being trauma sensitive. And as children return to classrooms, if you have not been there with them yet, you're going to find a variety of reactions and behaviors. We don't know what they've experienced. Some children have thrived at home, and some children have struggled at home. Some children have had amazing experiences with their families that they otherwise wouldn't have been able to have. Some children have witnessed their parents very stressed out, over what's happening, over jobs, over money. We don't know what they've been through. And one of the challenges of working with young children is that they can't usually tell us. They're not going to come up and say, listen, I've been through quite the trauma. I've been really stressed out. So we have to be as trauma sensitive as possible when we're predictable, when we give warnings, and when we set our expectations at a reasonable level, then we're being trauma sensitive and we're doing what they need us to do. Okay, so here are some of the resources, and I always like to share my resources because I think it's important that people are able to go from conference sessions and then take that information. Conference sessions, you know, I always feel like we're breezing through a topic. And I would like to offer you the opportunity to just know where I sourced information and where I tend to source information, and so that you can go and look too. And Tisha so kindly mentioned my book at the beginning. I'm gonna, you know, shamelessly say that I did resource my own book. It was something I wrote in there, so I just wanted to make sure that you were aware that it was in there. And then what I wanted to do is give time for questions, because I know in a topic like behavior, there are always many, many questions. And while you may be looking at this, I'm going to just preempt one of them, because I get this question all the time. Here's what I'm going to sort of preempt as a question and give it ahead of time. Many, many early childhood educators say to me, this is great for school, but I don't think that the families would do this, and I don't think that it's followed through with at home. And I'm just going to submit this answer to you. We can teach this to families. I do teach this to families. I know that they can learn it, and I've seen them interested in it. We can do our best to teach them. Here's how we talk to the children about rules. Please do the same at home. Here are our 3 phrases. Our 3 phrases are: be safe, be kind, take care of our things. If you use these phrases the way we do in school, it will help your child to learn this so much faster. You can offer that, but you can't control them. So at some point, we have to just recognize and understand that children actually do have the capability of learning different rules for different places and different ways of being for different places. They learn that you don't behave the same way on the playground as you do in a classroom, as you do at home, as you do, I don't know, at a religious service, as you do in the supermarket. They do learn all these different behaviors, and we have to give them a little credit for being able to learn that in school, here's how we handle behavior, which may be different than at home. Always keep in mind, I can't control what families are doing, but it is your job to offer them this knowledge. That is your job. And to create that partnership with dealing with their children's behavior. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to look at the time. I have no electricity at all, so I'm looking at my watch. Ooh, good. I left a little extra time for questions, which I'm happy to take. What I'm going to do is, you can't see me because I'm in the dark, but I'm going to, if it's okay with Tisha and Stephanie, I'm going to stop the screen share, because I would like you all to be able to come together as a community and perhaps even see each other.
Cindy, that is great. And I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording. So when you do that, you can have your little small group and people can just come up with questions.